Hello YouTubers, today's video is about the simulation hypothesis. As always, I welcome your comments. The simulation hypothesis is just a modern day version of Plato's cave. Rather than living in a cave, we are living in a simulation. Much like the shadows on the wall in Plato's cave, the simulation hypothesis suggests that our material world isn't real. The simulation hypothesis also agrees with Plato's teaching that we need to look to heaven or another dimension to explain the material world. I personally find the simulation hypothesis very interesting and possibly true. It offers a more powerful yet simpler explanation for many vexing problems in physics compared to the materialist worldview, of which I've highlighted a few. What I find most interesting are its ramifications. It can explain why many of our laws and theories appear to work a certain way, but that they ultimately may be an illusion. For example, all of the observational evidence suggests that the universe is ancient and that evolutionary processes occurred, causing life to develop on Earth. If we are in a simulated universe, however, the designer could have designed the universe to appear old and that evolutionary processes happened. The upcoming clips are from the documentary called The Simulation Hypothesis and from an episode of SpaceTime. I've provided links in the description.
From Leo Zusa on Instagram. How about the recent articles about the possibility of us being part of a simulation and the Big Bang being just the seeding event of such simulation? Thanks.
I'm totally there.
Yeah.
I'm digging it every minute of it. You don't like it?
I'm
loving it.
I want to hear your opinion.
I'm loving it.
I want to hear this.
I'm loving it.
Well,
So who made the simulation?
Some snot-nosed kid in the parents' basement of an alien civilization who's bored and they're more advanced than we are, and they have way more computing power than we are.
Right, so it's like a little handheld Nintendo you can
Exactly. And so they program in enough detail to completely simulate every molecule in this universe, and we are here for their entertainment. Why else can you explain where things are going along just fine in the world, that all of a sudden there's a complete disruption?
The snot-nosed kid.
Culturally, politically, economically, a complete disruption. I think they throw it in for entertainment. That's what I think.
Okay, I'm going to say, I have two things to say. Firstly, I predict that you don't believe that. That's my first prediction.
Okay.
But I don't want to put thoughts in your head.
There's an argument for why that's more likely than any other scenario. And I'll tell you that in a minute, but go on.
The numbers game, okay? So the idea that if you need to produce one universe capable of producing universe simulations.
And that's all you need.
And if that universe produces billions of universe simulations, then any universe that you happen to find yourself in
is more likely to be one of than the one universe that started it all.
If the way that virtual reality now exists and video games have advanced, it is likely that in say 1,000 years, whatever our virtual reality would be.
Or 30 years.
30 years. I was being generous.
Or 30. Yeah.
Well, 30 years, that whatever it was would potentially be physical. Like you would be able to feel it.
Okay, so
it wouldn't. It doesn't even require that. No, it just requires that what you program in there has in your Nintendo, whatever it is, has enough complexity that in the mind of the characters in that game, they think they're real.
Right, so it
and they have free will.
It can't simulate the whole universe, because to simulate a universe perfectly, you need a computer the size of a universe.
Do you?
Do you?
Yes.
I don't know.
Because, I mean, assuming it's a perfect...
It's kind of funny how scientists would rather say that ancient aliens built us rather than God.
From Leo.
I've provided a few clips that demonstrate a few of the problems that the simulation hypothesis is able to explain. Non-locality is something observed in the quantum world, but isn't understood well. The simulation hypothesis is able to explain non-locality.
Then, in 1964, the Irish physicist John Bell proposed his famous theorem. It's a very clever mathematically based way of experimentally testing and proving one way or the other who was right. Doing the experiment would require some very special hardware. It took 18 years for this technology to become available, and in 1982, the physicist Alan Aspect put it all together and ran the experiment. The results confirmed that non-locality was actually real. What Schrödinger had called entanglement, and was defended by Bohr but ridiculed by Einstein, was a fundamental property of nature. Instant correspondence can be seen between two particles that are separated by unlimited distance in space, and this only makes sense if the world is a virtual construct. In a virtual world, distance doesn't limit correspondence, since all points in a simulation are equidistant with respect to the source of the simulation. For example, in a computer game, all points on the screen are at equal distance with respect to the processor, and the same effect can be seen in our world. If our universe is a simulation projected onto a three-dimensional screen, then its processor would be equidistant to all points in the universe. Non-locality, one of the biggest problems in physics, is easily solved by the simulation hypothesis. Space seems to be an illusion created by the virtual construct. But even stranger than space being an illusion is what quantum physics tells us about matter itself.
I suspect that many have wondered, well, how did something come from nothing? The simulation hypothesis provides an explanation, but it's much harder to understand in the materialist worldview.
Starts at the beginning, with the Big Bang. This well-established cosmological model demonstrates that space-time was created by a single event billions of years ago and expanded into what we see around us today. Nearly all scientists agree that our universe began to exist at one point in the distant past. From the materialist view that our universe is all there is, as an objective, independent reality, the fact that the Big Bang came from nothing is very hard to explain. How could everything come from nothing? But if you look at the universe as a virtual construct, the Big Bang model works perfectly. Virtual worlds always begin with an information influx from a zero state, since they need to initially boot up. Every time a computer game starts up, a Big Bang occurs from the perspective of the game. From inside the virtual world itself, the creation always comes from nothing, because before it boots up, there is no space or time as defined by the rules of that virtual world. Starts at the beginning.
Perhaps the most perplexing problem in physics are the results of the dual-slit experiments. The experiments seem to indicate that matter is just a wave of potential energy or information until we observe it. When observed, the waves become particles of matter, and this even changes backwards in time. From a materialist worldview, this makes no sense at all.
Now, this apparatus can get moving along at a pretty good clip. So they fire a whole slew of photons through here, let the experiment run, gather plenty of data, and then run the analysis. And what are the results? Detectors 1 and 2 always show interference patterns because it's impossible to determine which of the two slits the photons came from. But detectors 3 and 4 always show clump patterns because we can know which slit these photons came from. That is the only difference. How the light chooses to display itself as particles or waves is dependent on how much we know about it. If it had to come from just one slit, clump pattern. If it might have come from either slit, interference pattern. There is no materialist explanation for this. But even more mind-boggling is that the photons know beforehand which detector they will hit. How do we know this? Because of how the twin behaves at detector 0. Because the path to detector 0 is shortest, one of the split pair registers here first, before its twin ends up at any other detector. And whatever registers at detector 0 always correlates with where its twin ends up. So if one of the pair hits detector 3 or 4, detector 0 always displays a clump pattern, But if its twin lands at detectors 1 or 2, detector 0 always displays an interference pattern. Can the particle predict the future? Or is space-time a virtual construct with all time frames available simultaneously at the source of the simulation? Modern physics has definitely decided for Plato. The smallest units of matter are, in fact, not physical objects in the ordinary sense of the word. They are potential forms. In Plato's sense, abstract ideas which can only be described in the language of mathematics. Space and time are ideas as well, not absolute properties of nature. Science has decided. Materialism is not a valid worldview. Now,
It's likely that the simulation hypothesis is also better accepted among the evangelical community because it implies a designer, because it indicates that the age of the universe may be an illusion, and because it provides an explanation for supernatural events. Because of its broad appeal, I think more research and funding should be devoted to it. As a general rule, if there is a hypothesis in science that can be supported by evangelical Christians and agnostic/atheist scientists, then it's best to devote research to it. Simply put, the research would have large public support, and the research would likely help us to improve our own technology, in addition to any explanations of existence the research may reveal. So here's what's important. The simulation hypothesis is not a new view at all. It's an ancient view that dates back at least as far as Plato. It's also a valid scientific hypothesis that offers a powerful explanation for many problems in physics today. It may even offer a better explanation than the materialist worldview. Because this view implies a designer and creator, some scientists may have trouble accepting this view, or may even attribute our design to aliens. Hey folks, if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.